You call it a natural act, but I tell you the truth. Masturbation is harmful. Harmful after a certain stage. Destructive. A masturbatory person becomes unrelated, a non-relative. He becomes very egoistic because he feels he is sufficient unto himself. Even for love, there is no need to depend on anybody. That's why it is harmful. Sexual energy is a gift of nature. At the moment of orgasm, ego and time disappear, which is the door to meditation. But you must not get stuck at this door. You must move the energy upwards into consciousness. Every time you waste this energy through mechanical release, you localize life into a single organ, collapsing the storm of your divine potential. Stop treating your ultimate life force like a handful of cheap stones thrown into the dark. If you do not learn to transmute this energy from sex to superconsciousness, you will grow old, but you will never grow up. Hello, my beloved ones. Today we are going to look into something that is kept in the deepest darkness of the human psyche. Something that nearly every individual experiences, yet trembles to speak about openly. We are going to look into the secret of your primal energy and specifically what this modern habit of masturbation actually does to your body, your mind, and your soul. Man has been confused from the very beginning, turned away from his own natural potential by a society that thrives on creating division. You have been taught to fight against your own life force, to oppose your natural instincts, and the result is that you have become a house divided against itself. When you look at humanity today, you do not see radiant, blissful individuals. You see a vast crowd of anxious, neurotic, and deeply frustrated people. To understand what masturbation does to you, you must first understand the fundamental nature of man as he is today. The mystics, particularly the Sufis and the great seeker George Gurdjieff, always stated a very shocking truth. Man is a machine. As you are right now, you are nothing but a robot, a sum total of your unconscious habits. You walk while sleeping, you eat while sleeping, you live your entire life in a deep state of sleepwalking. If you live a common life of 70 years, you will not find even 7 moments of pure, absolute consciousness in that entire span. Your reactions are completely automatic, programmed into you by your parents, your teachers, your politicians, and your priests. When you engage in the mechanical act of masturbation, you are operating at the very peak of this robotic existence. It is not an act of love. It is not an act of consciousness. It is simply a reaction to a build-up of biological tension. Your biology forces a certain accumulation of energy. Your mind becomes nervous. Your hands go into your pockets, and the whole routine unfolds completely mechanically, just like a machine producing a commodity. Because it happens 1,000,000 times, the habit becomes deeply ingrained, and the more you repeat it, the less awareness is required to perform it. It becomes a localized phenomenon. In a natural, healthy state, sexual energy is not meant to be restricted to one small corner of your body. It is your vital life force, the very electricity that keeps you alive. It is meant to flow through your entire being, from the soles of your feet to the very crown of your head, revitalizing every single cell, illuminating your intelligence and opening the petals of your heart. But when you turn to the mechanical habit of self-abuse, you are forcing this vast, beautiful ocean of energy to compress itself, to become localized entirely in the genitals. You are forcing a super atom of life to explode in a tiny, restricted space just to seek a momentary relief. This localized release is not an authentic experience of joy. It is more like having a good sneeze. When you have a cold and you sneeze, you feel a sudden relief, a clearing of tension. But you do not call a sneeze an experience of divine ecstasy. You do not write poetry about a sneeze. You do not build temples to celebrate it. Yet, modern man uses his primary creative energy exactly like a sneeze, throwing it away simply to feel a temporary relief from the nervous tension that his own mind has accumulated. The energy is cast out, the body becomes empty, and the immediate consequence is a sense of falling, a deep depression, and a pinch of heartbreak. Before we dive deeper into how this robotic behavior cripples your spiritual growth, take a moment to look into your own heart. If this transmission of truth is striking a chord within your being, if you feel a calling to awaken from the slumber of mechanical habits, I invite you to interact with this sharing. Leave your reflection in the comments. Share this insight with another seeker who may be groping in the dark. And subscribe to this channel so we can continue this journey of awareness together. If you feel an overflowing gratitude and wish to support the continuity of these teachings to help us reach more souls across this planet, you are always welcome to click the join button, offer a gesture through super thanks, or explore our digital ebooks that are created to illuminate your path. Let this support be an act of love, a conscious sharing of energy, free from any commercial transaction, coming naturally from your heart to the universe. When you finish this mechanical act, you look at your own reality and you find a deep sense of guilt. You take oaths, you make firm resolutions that from today onward you will no longer give in to this habit, that you will curb your desires and practice restraint. But you do not understand the fundamental law of the human mind, what the psychologists call the law of reverse effect. The more you resolve not to do something, the more that very object becomes the center of your consciousness. Your wide road vanishes and you become completely hypnotized by the very stone you are trying to avoid. Your firm vow of celibacy is taken only by the tiny, superficial surface of your mind, while the remaining 9/10 of your subconscious is screaming for that very release. You have forced a war between yourself and your own energy, and in this war you are destined to be shattered. No animal in the entire animal kingdom is as obsessed with sex as man. Animals are normal, they have limits, they have seasons, they have a natural rhythm. A monkey or a dog does not think about sex 24 hours a day. The energy moves in them when nature demands it, and once the season passes, they forget about it completely. They do not write pornographic books. They do not create secret clubs. They do not cover themselves in false morality. But look at man, the mad repressor. Because he has tried to trample his natural instincts for thousands of years, because his priests have shouted from the pulpits that sex is dirty, that sex is a sin, he has turned his whole world into a giant asylum. Sexuality fumes inside him, awake or asleep, in his etiquette as well as in his nightmares. This perverted sexuality, this constant leakage of energy through the wrong pores, is the direct consequence of anti-sex teachings. You cannot destroy something that is the very root of your life. You were born out of a sexual act. Your mother and father were not praying or listening to a sermon when you were conceived. They were making love, their energies were merging, and from that creative union, your first cell was formed. You are made of sex cells. To hate sex is to hate your own existence, to create a permanent civil war within your own body. When you masturbate out of boredom, out of loneliness, or out of a need to escape your anxieties, you are acting as a victim of this social conditioning. Society wants you to be weak, because a weak man is an obedient man. A weak man joins the ambitious race for money, for power, for respectability, without ever questioning the absolute insanity of the status quo. He becomes an efficient machine, a perfect cog in the wheel of a competitive world. The neighbor's grass always looks greener to him because he is completely disconnected from his own internal potential. He wears a smiling mask so that others will think he is happy, and everyone else wears a mask to deceive him in return. It is an intricate game of mutual fraud. True religion has nothing to do with this renunciation, with this slow suicide of the senses. True religion is the art of living fully, of transforming your primal coal into diamonds. Sex is the starting point, the fact, the stark reality from which your journey must begin. You cannot grasp the golden peak of the mountain if you despise the base camp. If you wish to reach the sublime heights of superconsciousness, you must first accept your biology with joy, with gratitude, and with an open heart. The measure of your acceptance is the measure of your ultimate deliverance. When you learn to look at your life force without the interpretation of right and wrong, when you drop the heavy burden of should and must, a great silence descends upon you. If you are sad, be the sadness. If you are full of passion, acknowledge the passion. The moment the division within you disappears, the imposter dies, and your original face is revealed. This is the first step toward becoming an authentic individual, a master of your own destiny, rather than a mechanical slave to biological tension. We must move from this state of robotic reaction into a space of pure, spontaneous action, where your energy is no longer wasted in a frantic race for relief, but is conserved, elevated, and allowed to overflow as a beautiful dance of consciousness. This civil war within your own biological frame is what gives birth to the sexual maniac. The sexual maniac is not a natural creation of existence. He is entirely a product of your civilization, your cultures, and your religions. When you trample upon a natural river of energy, when you build artificial dams of morality across it, the water does not simply vanish. It accumulates, it turns into a raging flood, and it begins to leak through every distorted crack of your personality. Because you have been taught to look at sex as a sin, as an animalistic decay, you have driven it into the darkest basements of your subconscious mind. You do not allow it to be a conscious, simple, playful aspect of your life. You repress it during your waking hours. You maintain a very polite and plastic smile on your face. But the moment you close your eyes, the volcanic eruption begins. It haunts your dreams, it colors your thoughts, it shapes your literature, your paintings, and your entire social structure. Man's consciousness has become entirely sexual precisely because he has tried to escape from it. This is the supreme ironical twist of the human mind. That which you fight against becomes your master. You think you are moving toward heaven. You think you are chanting the name of the divine to purify your soul. But look closely behind your prayers and your rosaries. Behind the frantic repetition of the holy names, there is nothing but the echo of your suppressed lust. You are using the divine as a shield, a mere escape from the reality of your biological tension. But you cannot run away from that which is woven into the very marrow of your bones. You are sitting on a live volcano, holding your breath, terrified that at any moment you might be toppled and exposed. To illustrate this state of human ignorance, let me tell you a small story of a fisherman. Early one morning, long before the sun had risen, a fisherman went down to the bank of the river to begin his day's work. As he walked through the pitch darkness, his foot stumbled upon something soft, and when he reached down, he found a small sack filled with what felt like small stones. He put his fishing net aside and squatted on the muddy bank, waiting patiently for the dawn to break. Lazily, to pass the time in the absolute darkness, he took one stone out of the bag and tossed it into the rushing waters of the river. Then he cast another stone, and then another. He had nothing else to do, so he kept flipping these stones into the dark river one by one, listening to the small splash they made in the silence of the night. Slowly, the sun began to rise above the horizon, and the faint morning light began to illuminate the river bank. At that precise moment, the fisherman had thrown away almost every single stone in the sack. Only one last stone remained lying in the open palm of his hand. When he looked down by the daylight to see what he held, his heart almost failed him, and his entire body began to tremble with a cold, terrifying shock. It was not a stone at all. It was a priceless gem, a jewel of unimaginable wealth. In the absolute darkness of the night, unknowingly and carelessly, he had thrown away an entire sack of these precious jewels. He had accidentally stumbled upon enough wealth to enrich his life many times over, to free himself from all poverty forever. But because he was in total darkness, he had squandered it all into the deep river. Full of absolute remorse, he fell to the ground, sobbing and crying, almost out of his mind with a shattering grief. He was fortunate that at least one single gem was left in his hand before the light dawned, but the rest were lost forever in the deep current. Most human beings are not even as fortunate as that poor fisherman. They spend their entire lives in the pitch darkness of mechanical habits, taking the precious jewels of their vital life force and flipping them away into the void, one by one, through mechanical releases. By the time they realize the supreme importance and the divine mystery of the energy they carry within themselves, their lives have already slipped away through their fingers. The treasure is squandered, the vitality is drained, and nothing remains but a hollow, cold grave. You treat your sexual energy exactly like those stones, looking at it as something heavy, dirty, and useless, a mere biological burden to be cast off in the dark corners of your life. But I tell you, this very energy is the diamond. It is the coal that has the potential to be transformed into the purest light. If only you can bring the daylight of consciousness to it. If this discourse is bringing a ray of daylight into the dark corridors of your own mind, if you feel your heart waking up to the reality of your inner wealth, I invite you to bring your presence into our shared space. Express your understanding by interacting with this transmission. Leave a reflection in the comments to share how this hidden tension has operated in your own life, and subscribe to this channel so that we can walk together out of the mechanical darkness. If you feel an overflowing gratitude for these insights and wish to support our work in reaching millions of sleeping souls across this earth, you are always welcome to click the join button, extend your support through super thanks, or explore the profound guidance compiled in our digital ebooks. Let your participation be a natural, conscious sharing of love arising from your heart to help elevate the collective consciousness of humanity. This mechanical dropping of your energy happens because you have never been taught how to be settled within your own source. You have been turned into a beggar who is constantly looking to the outside world for attention, for validation, and for a false sense of respectability. Because you do not know who you are mortally afraid of being ignored. If you walk down the street and no one turns around to look at you, your artificial personality begins to crumble. You need the eyes of others to serve as a mirror because you have completely forgotten how to open your own internal eyes. This is why the male ego has created such a destructive and violent structure over the centuries. The male ego is constantly trying to prove its superiority, constantly striving to be number one, because deep down it is haunted by a terrifying inferiority complex. The man looks at the woman and unconsciously he realizes that she possesses a power he can never have. Nature has chosen the woman to be the vehicle for the continuation of life. She can become a mother. She can grow a new soul within her womb, while the man stands on the periphery as an accidental participant. This original imbalance created a deep paranoia in the masculine mind. To hide his sense of powerlessness, the male ego took a brutal path. It forced the woman into a state of total economic, educational, and social imprisonment. It reduced her to a subhuman category, declaring her to be fragile, weak, and sinful, simply so that the man could stand on an artificial pedestal and feel like a master. But in condemning the woman, the man committed a supreme crime against his own nature. Every human being is an organic whole, a delicate mixture of both masculine and feminine energies. You have received half of your being from your father and half from your mother. You carry both the sun and the moon within your own frame. When the man represses the woman in the outside world, he is simultaneously executing a brutal suppression of his own inner woman. He shuts the door on his own capacity to feel, to be gentle, to express vulnerability, and to cry. If a little boy sheds tears, his parents immediately bark at him, telling him not to cry like a girl, telling him to be a strong man. This is a profound mutilation of the human soul. You are cutting off your own roots, turning yourself into a cold, insensitive piece of metal, and then you wonder why your life feels so mechanical, so empty of poetry, and so utterly boring. The mechanical routine of your sexual life reflects this inner deadness. Look at how modern couples make love. It is not an act of ecstatic merging. It is an absolute nightmare of mutual manipulation. The man approaches the woman with a tense, aggressive urgency as if he is fulfilling a hard chore for which he needs a quick release. He is in a frantic hurry, and within 2 or 3 minutes he ejaculates and turns over to go to sleep. The woman is left completely in limbo, her entire body warmed up but denied the beautiful release of a total orgasm. She sheds silent tears in the darkness of the bedroom, used simply as an inanimate object, a commodity for the man's physical relief. This is not love-making. This is a localized, mechanical exercise that leaves both individuals feeling empty, separate, and deeply resentful. Because this routine becomes so incredibly monotonous and stale, you naturally look for substitutes. You turn to pornography, you secretively flip through obscene magazines, and you look at naked images, completely unaware that you are behaving like a madman. No animal is ever interested in looking at a picture of another naked animal. Have you ever seen a dog or a lion interested in pornography? It is impossible because they are natural. But man has been made so unnatural by his priests that he cannot look at flesh and blood reality with clarity. So he has to satisfy his starved curiosity through paper images. The pornographer and the priest are partners in the very same business. The priest throws the tar of guilt on your natural instincts, and the pornographer comes along through the back door to sell you the cleaning fluid at an exorbitant price. They both thrive because you are divided against yourself. If you wish to break out of this robotic prison, you must abandon all the false ideals of how you should be. You must accept the naked truth of your present reality with complete, unclouded honesty. If you are feeling a deep sexual tension, do not call it names. Do not label it as an animalistic sin. It is simply your vital electricity waiting to be understood. When you bring the light of awareness to this energy, when you approach it not for a mechanical escape, but with a sense of pure, prayerful reverence, a miraculous transformation begins to unfold. You stop using the other person as a tool for your relief, and you begin to look at them as a sacred temple of existence. This shift from mechanical reaction to conscious response is the very core of the tantric vision. Tantra does not ask you to become a monk. It does not ask you to trample upon your body or to escape to the wilderness of the mountains. Tantra tells you to take root deeply in your own biology, to accept your animal heritage with absolute innocence, because that is the only soil from which your divinity can sprout. A tree that wants to touch the stars must send its roots down into the darkest depths of the earth. It cannot fly into the sky by denying the mud from which it was born. Your sexual energy is your mud, and within that mud, the golden lotus of your Buddhahood is waiting to open its petals. The ordinary sexual act is always a peak experience. You climb a hill of high nervous excitement, you reach an involuntary climax, and then you fall headlong into a valley of exhaustion and depression. It drains your vitality and brings you closer to death. But Tantra introduces you to an entirely different dimension, what can be called the valley orgasm. In Tantric lovemaking, there is no place for rush, no place for aggressive movement, and no desire for ejaculation. The lovers meet not as two tense, excited combatants trying to unload their burdens onto each other, but as two deeply relaxed, silent streams of energy that slide into a profound, motionless embrace. The man remains entirely passive, silent, and inactive, allowing the woman's energy to wake up naturally. Because her sexuality is not localized but covers her entire body like an ocean, she needs time. She needs a gentle and unhurried atmosphere to melt. When the man drops his masculine aggression and becomes a receptive womb, the woman can fully blossom into her creative power. They can remain fused in this silent, non-moving unity for hours together, without any loss of energy, without any drop into exhaustion. Instead of throwing energy out into the void, their opposite poles complete a magnificent biological circuit. The negative and the positive, the yin and the yang, feed and revitalize each other continuously. When they finally separate, they do not feel a hangover or a sense of guilt. They arise from the bed radiant, luminous, and filled with a tremendous vitality that can last for days. This experience of the valley orgasm is your first authentic glimpse of samadhi within the physical body. In that motionless, silent union, two things happen to you simultaneously. Your ego completely evaporates, and time comes to an absolute standstill. For a brief fraction of eternity, you do not remember your name, you do not remember your worries, and you do not exist as a separate individual. The wall between you and the other has collapsed entirely. You have stepped out of your tight, dirty room under the vast, starlit sky of existence. It is this experience of egolessness and timelessness that you are unconsciously begging for every time you run after sex. You are not hungry for a woman's or a man's physical flesh. Your soul is thirsty for that short moment of cosmic unity, for that total relaxation of being. Once you know this secret, once you bring this high charge of awareness into your life, your dependence on the mechanical habit of self-abuse simply drops away like a dry leaf from a tree. You do not have to fight against it. You do not have to suppress it with iron control, because the fight itself is a proof of your ignorance. When a man is offered a box of genuine diamonds for free, he does not need a moral lecture to stop collecting ordinary stones from the street. He drops the stones naturally because they have lost all value in his eyes. The day you realize that the very same bliss, the very same ecstatic silence can be accessed through the path of relaxation and meditation, your energy automatically turns inward. The downward flow into mechanical release is transformed into an upward ascent toward superconsciousness. But our societies are organized by blind politicians and greedy priests who are mortally terrified of an integrated, ecstatic human being. They want you to remain a fragmented, guilt-ridden robot, because only a divided man can be exploited. A man who is full of self-hatred, who looks at his own body as a well of sin, is a perfect customer for their temples, their churches, and their political mafias. He will readily go to war. He will gladly murder innocent people in the name of a flag or a piece of holy text, simply to find a violent outlet for his suppressed life force. All your history is a long record of this collective insanity, because your very roots have been poisoned at the moment of conception. You were conceived in frustration, you were born in ignorance, and you are being trained to die as a machine. It is time to revolt against this ancestral disease. Your first and only responsibility is not to any nation, not to any traditional religion, but to your own vital being. You must learn to love yourself completely, exactly as you are, because that self-love is the food that makes your intelligence sharp and radiant. Do not let anyone dictate to you how you should behave. Do not let any dead saint ride on your shoulders. Look into your own reality here and now. If you can bring even a single moment of absolute awareness to your actions, you are initiating a profound inner revolution. You are breaking the programmatic conditioning that has held humanity in chains for 5,000 years. To walk this path of transformation, to turn your primal coal into a sparkling diamond, requires the supreme courage of a warrior. The warrior is not a soldier who goes out to destroy others. The warrior is a gambler who is ready to stake his entire known past for the sake of the unknown. He is ready to drop his protective shields, his plastic masks, and his mechanical certainties to face the naked reality of his own existence. He does not bargain with life like a cautious businessman, trying to give less and grab more. He throws himself fully into the present moment without keeping anything back. This total involvement is what melts the robotic mind and opens the secret gateway to your essential being. When you sit in absolute silence, doing nothing, watching the simple rhythm of your breath as it moves in and out, you are stepping out of the theater of social expectations. The mechanical programs of your conditioning cannot operate when you introduce this radical element of pure awareness. The mind becomes confused, the old reactions stop functioning, and a deep, pristine vacuum is created in your consciousness. It is out of this vacuum, this beautiful inner emptiness, that true love is born. You are no longer a beggar running after others to fill your loneliness. You become an emperor whose heart is overflowing with an abundance of joy, ready to share its fragrance with the whole universe. Let your sexual energy become the very ladder with which you scale the highest peaks of meditation. Do not separate your biology from your spirituality. Let them be a single, beautiful, flowing river. Approach your love life not as an act of animal release, but as a deep alchemical meditation where you meet the Creator in the very moment of creation. Slow down your breathing, focus your full awareness on the midpoint between your eyes, and let your body melt into an unhurried, motionless fusion with existence. You will be astonished at how the heavy chains of lust dissolve on their own leaving behind the pure, immortal gold of your celibacy, your authentic communion with the divine. Walk fearlessly into the valley of relaxation. Drop your defensive masks and let the sun and the moon within you dance in a perfect, harmonious unity. This inner division, this constant structural balancing act between the aggressive solar energy and the receptive lunar energy, is not something you can resolve by running away into a new set of rules. The family, as it has been constructed by human civilization, operates as the very first laboratory of this psychological distortion. It is a beautiful sacred prison designed to capture the free-flowing stream of a child's innocence and channel it directly into the service of institutional interests. The father figure and the mother figure, asleep in their own traditional conditionings, cannot tolerate a truly spontaneous, authentic individual, because an authentic individual is completely unpredictable. They immediately begin the work of pruning your natural potential, teaching you how to say a plastic, polite yes when your entire biological reality is screaming no. You are taught that obedience is the ultimate virtue, while your natural impulse to disobey, to discover your own boundaries, is branded as the original sin. This is how you become a mechanical husband, a frustrated professional, or a submissive believer, carrying an intense, hidden anger against the very people you are supposed to love. You look at your marital life and you find that it has degenerated into a round-the-clock political negotiation, a cold nightmare where you are simply together for the sake of the children or social respectability. You are using each other as shields to avoid facing the immense, terrifying emptiness of your own being. Because you do not know how to live alone in pure, meditative joy, the other becomes an absolute biological addiction for you. And because you are dependent on this addiction for your distraction from boredom, you deep down despise the person you claim to love. Dependency always breeds a subtle, boiling hostility. Because to depend on another for your happiness is to accept a state of spiritual slavery. If you feel the weight of this ancestral slavery pulling at your spirit, if you recognize that your domestic and professional life has become a repetitive, automated pattern, I invite you to bring your awareness into this circle of searchers. Take a moment to reflect on your own conditioning and share your journey in the comments below, letting your words become a mirror for other traveling souls. If this transmission of timeless truth is helping to clear the fog from your consciousness, subscribe to this channel so we can continue to walk out of the mechanical traps of the past together. For those among you who feel a deep, overflowing joy and wish to participate directly in the expansion of this work, to help us provide this daylight to millions who are still spiritually asleep, you are always welcome to click the official join button on your interface. Extend a direct gesture of support through super thanks, or look into our compiled digital ebooks that are created to serve as maps for your inner territory. Let your support be a completely conscious, motiveless sharing of love arising naturally from your being to support the ultimate awakening of humanity, to transform this domestic nightmare into a beautiful, flowing river of consciousness. You must first understand the absolute necessity of taking the first step from where you are standing right now. You cannot leap into the cosmic presence of the divine, into what I call Rama, if you are completely ignorant of the internal mechanism of your lust, which is karma. Lust is your starting point. It is the raw, unrefined manure from which the fragrant rose of your ultimate love must grow. If you despise the manure, if you call it dirty and sinful because some uneducated priest told you so, you are destroying the very possibility of your transformation. You must begin to look at your primary sexual energy with a deep, sympathetic science, just as a real scientist looks at the power hidden within a tiny material atom. The fast, shallow breathing that accompanies your ordinary mechanical intimacy is the main biological reason why your experiences are over in a flash of 2 or 3 minutes. When you are driven by a frantic, nervous anxiety to escape your loneliness, your breathing becomes rapid, your heartbeat accelerates, and your vital energy rushes instantly toward a localized, involuntary discharge. You experience a momentary sneeze of physical relief, and then you drop directly into a valley of exhaustion, feeling a profound heartbreak and a cold drop in your vitality. This is not an act of love. It is a purely mechanical reaction of a robotic body trying to drop a heavy load of nervous accumulation. If you wish to make sex a genuine door to samadhi, a channel to the superconscious, you must completely reverse this hurried approach. When you are with the woman or the man you love, you must treat the space as an absolute temple of the Creator. Slow down your breathing purposefully. Let your breath become so shallow, so quiet, that it feels as if it is almost not there at all. When your breathing is perfectly calm, your biological energy does not rush toward an immediate, frantic ejaculation. It slows down, it becomes cool, and it spreads naturally through your entire corporate frame, moving from a localized genital tension into a magnificent total immersion of your full being. Simultaneously, while you are engaged in this unhurried, delicate embrace, you must focus your internal awareness directly on the Agni Chakra, the seat of your consciousness located exactly between your two eyes. When your presence is firmly rooted in this third eye center, and your breathing remains perfectly shallow and slow, the duration of your union can naturally expand for hours together without any involuntary loss of your vital seed. You step completely out of the mechanical peak orgasm and slide into the deep healing waters of the valley orgasm. You do not drop from a mountain into exhaustion. You arise from this meditative encounter feeling immensely radiant, young, and charged with a fresh, luminous vitality that illuminates your intelligence for days to come. This is the great energetic secret that the ancient seers of Tantra discovered thousands of years ago, but which the moralists and the priests have done their absolute best to trample and conceal from the masses. The creators of the world-famous temples of Khajuraho, Puri, and Konarak were not pornographers. They were highly advanced evolutionary scientists who understood the spiritual syntax of human sexuality. When you walk up to the outer walls of the temple of Khajuraho, you are confronted with hundreds of beautifully carved sculptures depicting every possible posture of the sexual act. The architecture is an intentional, deliberate lesson in human consciousness. The builders were stating a stark reality. Lust, passion, and sexuality exist on the absolute circumference of human life. If your mind is still completely obsessed with these biological mechanics, you have no right to enter the inner sanctum of the divine. The searcher was instructed to sit quietly in front of these external carvings, to look into them without any judgment, to meditate on their serenity and grace until his internal maniac, his mad, perverted curiosity had completely evaporated. Only when your mind becomes completely calm, cool, and detached from the outer wall of physical form are you permitted to step inside the temple. And when you cross the threshold into the deepest core of the Khajuraho temple, you find a total surprise. There is no idol, there is no statue of God, there is no name written anywhere. There is only an absolute pristine vacuum, a pure, silent nothingness. The outer ring is raw physical energy, and the inner center is the perfect void of the divine. This is the complete journey of man, from the outer wall of Kama to the inner emptiness of absolute Samadhi. But the moralistic preachers, in their poor intelligence and intense paranoia, have always wanted to paint over these masterworks, to cover the walls of Khajuraho with terracotta, because they are terrified that looking at reality will corrupt the youth. They do not see that it is their own continuous suppression that creates the very corruption they claim to fight against. By making sex a taboo, a dirty secret to be hidden behind locked doors, they ensure that your mind remains perpetually trapped in a state of infantile curiosity. You become a secret reader of obscenity, hiding pornographic images inside the covers of your holy texts, playing a dual game of public piety and private perversion. This state of inner duplicity has completely crippled the procreative process of humanity. Look at the children who are being born into this world today. They are not conscious creations. They are the purely accidental byproducts of your frustrated sexuality. You approach your intimacy with a mind full of worry, anger, or business calculations, using the other person merely as a tool to escape your domestic tension, and a child simply drops in as an uninvited guest. You treat these children exactly like unexpected visitors who disturb your comfort. You provide them with food, you show them synthetic etiquette, but deep down, your constant subconscious thought is to wonder when these bores are going to leave your house. The child carries this germ of parental frustration in the very marrow of his bones from the moment of conception, growing up to be an equally anxious, mechanical, and violent robot. If you wish to sire a higher soul, a Superman who carries kindness, beauty, and authentic intelligence in his character, the biological circumstances of his conception must be of an elite, meditative quality. A child born out of a true, conscious union, where the parents have touched the timeless vacuum of the valley orgasm before the seed is sown, is born with religion inherent in his nature. He does not need a Sunday school to teach him how to be good. He does not need a priest to threaten him with hellfire, because his very physiology is attuned to the rhythmic harmony of existence. He grows up as a majestic individual, free from the mechanical self-hatred that plagues the current generation of mankind. To move toward this magnificent possibility, you must drop the cautious, calculating mind of the businessman and become a true player in the cosmic game of life, what the Eastern mystics call Leela. The businessman is an absolute coward. He always wants to bargain with reality, trying to give the least amount of himself while extracting the maximum profit from the other. He approaches meditation with the same retail mentality, asking what he will gain from sitting in silence, how his bank balance or his social status will improve if he dedicates an hour to awareness. He is completely unable to understand anything that has no commercial purpose. But life in its ultimate reality is entirely purposeless. It is not a factory producing commodities. It is a wild, overflowing dance of energy that exists purely for its own delight. A child running after a butterfly or collecting colored stones on a muddy beach has no financial purpose in mind. If you ask her why she is dancing, she will simply shrug her shoulders, because the act itself is its own supreme reward. The moment you can appreciate the absolutely useless, the moment you can sit under a tree or look into the eyes of your beloved without any desire to achieve a goal, you are stepping out of the robotic prison of your civilization. You are allowing your divided parts to meet, to melt, and to settle into the pristine stillness of your essential being. This internal settlement is the only true celibacy, the only authentic brahmacharya that has ever existed on this earth. It is not a forced restraint of your hormones. It is the ultimate cream of a profound meditative experience. When your inner woman and your inner man have dissolved their conflict and become an integrated whole, your energy no longer leaks away through the mechanical habit of self-abuse. You become an independent emperor of your own consciousness, completely centered, grounded, and free from the need to beg for respectability from a blind crowd. You live your life with an intense, playful vitality, ready to dance in the sun or face the final mystery of death with the very same graceful smile. When you realize that this very margin is the other margin, that this ordinary, chaotic world of sansar is not separate from the ultimate freedom of moksha, your entire approach to spiritual adventure undergoes a total revolution. You stop treating your path as a business enterprise where you're constantly trying to balance your moral accounts, and you begin to live life as a pure, unconditional game. The mind that is always looking for a secure result, the mind that handles its internal energy like a cautious shopkeeper handles his cash, can never understand the beautiful, wild landscape of the unknown. You have been trained by your society to look for profit in everything, to ask what the biological or financial dividend will be before you take a single step. But your vital energy, the magnificent electricity that manifests as sex within your body, does not understand the petty calculations of the marketplace. It is a cosmic force that demands your total presence, your absolute willingness to risk the familiar for the sake of the unrecognizable. When you turn to the mechanical routine of masturbation, you are essentially behaving like a small, terrified shopkeeper who is hiding behind the counter because he is afraid of the vast sky outside. You have a huge accumulation of creative life force fuming within your frame, but because you are full of self-hatred and traditional guilt, you do not know how to let this energy expand into an authentic dance of consciousness. You look at the tension as an enemy, a disturbing biological nuisance that needs to be discarded as quickly as possible through a localized genital explosion. You seek a cheap, hurried release in the dark corners of your life, using your own imagination to create a false substitute for reality. This mechanical dropping of your energy is a profound act of cowardice, a defensive strategy to avoid the magnificent risk of true connection and deep meditative awareness. If you feel your heart waking up to the reality of this internal duality, if you are beginning to perceive how your mechanical habits have kept you separate from the ocean of life, I invite you to bring your awareness into our shared circle of searchers. Take a moment to look into your own experience and leave an authentic reflection in the comments, sharing how this hidden friction has operated within your daily life. If this daylight is helping to dissolve the heavy fog of your social conditioning, express your presence by interacting with this sharing, and subscribe to this channel so that we can continue to look into the deepest secrets of our being together. For those among you who are filled with a deep, overflowing joy and wish to support the continuity of these transmissions, to help us reach millions of sleeping souls who are still trapped in the robotic chains of the past, you are always welcome to click the join button on your screen, offer a gesture of gratitude through super thanks, or look into our compiled digital ebooks that are created to serve as clear maps for your inner growth. Let your support be a natural, motiveless expression of love arising from your being to help elevate the collective consciousness of this beautiful planet. The moralistic preachers have created a massive perversion in the world by telling you that your body is a well of sin, that your instincts are animalistic, and that you must trample upon them to become a holy man. They have turned your primary energy into a cold, hidden wound that poisons your entire social reality. Because you cannot stop the natural flow of your hormones, because your autonomous body continues to produce its vital seed regardless of what the priest says, you are forced into a permanent state of hypocrisy. You display a very respectable plastic smile to your neighbors. You follow the codes of traditional morality with a rigid correctness. But deep down, You are completely eaten up by a burning, subconscious anxiety. Your energy is leaking through the wrong pores, fuming inside you like a trapped volcano that can erupt at any moment into anger, jealousy, or a mad, perverted obsession. This is the exact psychological mechanism that turns man into a sexual maniac. The sexual maniac is not a creation of nature. He is a purely artificial product of a society that has declared war on sex. When you repress a natural desire, when you pull down the blinds and pretend it is not there, it does not disappear. It simply sinks into the deepest basements of your psyche, waiting for the slightest opportunity to lash out in all its distorted ugliness. This is why your movies, your poems, your advertisements, and your political structures are completely saturated with a hidden lust. You are trying to avoid the fact that you are an animal, completely unaware that to accept your animal heritage with innocence is the only way to go beyond it. A man who refuses to acknowledge that he is rooted in the earth can never fly into the sky. He will simply remain suspended in a state of neurotic limbo, half dead and half alive. The ordinary act of mechanical release is a peak experience where you build up a high nervous excitement, reach an involuntary climax, and then fall headlong into a valley of deep depression and exhaustion. It is a localized release that serves merely as a temporary tranquilizer for a tense, automated body. But Tantra shows you an entirely different door, a magnificent path where sex becomes an alchemical meditation. In the tantric vision, you do not seek excitement, you do not look for a rapid climax, and you have no desire for ejaculation. The lovers meet not to unload their burdens onto each other, but to slide into a profound, motionless embrace where their opposite polarities complete a magnificent biological circuit. The man remains completely passive, silent, and receptive, letting his aggressive solar energy melt into the soft, deep ocean of the feminine presence. When you slow down your breathing and allow it to become so shallow that it is almost non-existent, your energy ceases to rush toward an immediate, localized discharge. It spreads through your entire corporate frame, revitalizing every single cell, illuminating your intelligence, and filling your being with an ancient, peaceful stillness. Your awareness remains firmly focused on the Agni Chakra, the third eye center between your brows, drawing the vital force upward from the lower centers toward the highest realms of superconsciousness. You experience the deep, healing waters of the valley orgasm, where time stands completely still and the ego evaporates into absolute nothingness. You realize for the first time in your life that the magnetic pull you have felt towards sex was never a hunger for another body. It was a deep, unquenchable thirst of your soul to touch the timeless vacuum of the divine. Once this daylight of consciousness dawns upon your inner landscape, the mechanical habit of self-abuse drops away naturally, without the slightest effort of control. You do not need to take rigid oaths or engage in a brutal civil war against your own flesh, because the lower loses its value the moment the higher is tasted. A man who has found a treasure of genuine diamonds does not need to be reminded to drop the ordinary stones he was hoarding in his pockets. He lets them go spontaneously because they have become completely meaningless. This is the only true celibacy, the authentic brahmacharya, that is the ultimate cream of a profound meditative experience, and not a forced mutilation of your biology. But your political leaders and religious custodians are mortally afraid of an integrated, ecstatic individual who is centered within his own being. They want you to remain a fragmented, guilt-ridden beggar who is constantly looking to the outside world for validation, for medals, and for social status. Only a divided man, a man who is full of internal conflict and self-hatred, can be forced to join their herds, to follow their commands blindly, and to sacrifice his precious life in their insane wars. They have turned your family, your education, and your entire civilization into a vast mechanism to produce efficient, obedient robots. It is time to break out of this collective nightmare, to drop your plastic masks and your defensive shields, and to reclaim the pristine innocence with which you were born. You must develop the supreme courage of a warrior, the wild spirit of a gambler who is ready to stake his entire known past for the sake of the unexplored unknown. Do not live your life as a calculation. Do not spend your days turning your vitality into a dry bank balance. Live dangerously, live intensely, and live in the immediate presence of the here and now. When you sit in complete silence, doing nothing, allowing your mind to dissolve into the pristine vacuum of no mind, you are stepping out of the programmatic prison of history. You are allowing your sun and your moon to dance in a perfect, harmonious unity, transforming your primary biological coal into a sparkling diamond of universal consciousness. This beautiful transformation of your primary life force cannot happen as long as you look at your biological reality through the distorted eyes of a monk or an ascetic. All traditional religions have taught man to renounce his wife, to renounce his children, to leave the world, and to turn his back on every small pleasure that makes life a festive space. They have told you that to kill your desires is to please the divine, but they do not understand that they are simply teaching you how to commit a slow psychological suicide. When you trample upon your natural love, when you block the energy of sex through a forced and artificial vow of celibacy, you are not purifying your soul. You are simply creating a deep, festering wound within your own physiology. Life stems from sex. Life consists of sex. And it is only through the refinement of this vital force that you can ever hope to reach the serene peaks of authentic compassion. If you block the source, the stream dries up completely and you turn into a cold, joyless, and unproductive entity that walks the earth like a living corpse. The so-called celibate saints and monks have contributed absolutely nothing to the deep wisdom of humanity, to the beauty of art, or to the ecstatic dance of our collective consciousness. Because their love is dead, their intelligence becomes utterly arid. A man whose vital force has been suppressed cannot look at a painting and feel its aesthetic magic. He cannot compose poetry that carries a living soul, because his words are nothing but a mechanical exercise of the intellect, empty of all spiritual fire. The only thing these repressive institutions have given to mankind is a collection of deep perversions, psychological anxieties, and modern physical plagues like AIDS, which are the direct biological consequences of going against human hormones and the natural laws of your own body. Your body is a beautifully autonomous mechanism that operates under its own natural program, completely ignoring the foolish dogmas of your mind. It does not care whether you are a Christian monk or a chaste priest. It continues to produce its vital seed every single day. And when you sit on this seed with an iron control, it leaks out through the wrong channels, creating an intense, subconscious obsession that turns your whole life into a dark, secret nightmare. It is because we are gathering together on this platform to look directly into these hidden wounds that this circle of ours has become a unique sanctuary for the human spirit. We are not here to indulge in commercial transactions or to follow a blind traditional herd. We are here to support each other in the total deprogramming of our minds. If you feel a deep, silent gratitude for these insights, if you sense that this daylight is helping you to dissolve the heavy ancestral chains of guilt, I invite you to share this medicine with other traveling soul. Leave your authentic reflection in the comments below. Let your friends know about this transmission by sharing the video, and subscribe to this channel so that our shared awareness can continue to expand like a fire across this planet. For those among you who feel a profound calling to become active participants in this inner revolution, to help us keep this flame alive and protect these teachings from the corporate mafias of the world, you are always welcome to click the join button on your interface. Extend a direct gesture of energy through super thanks, or look into our carefully compiled digital ebooks that serve as clear maps for your inner territory. Let your contribution be a completely motiveless sharing of love, arising naturally from your heart to help birth a new, enlightened humanity on this earth. The priests and the politicians have always been in a deep, mutual conspiracy to exploit man through the mechanism of fear. They know that a man who is perfectly centered, a man who loves his body and trusts his own spontaneous intelligence, can never be made into a slave. He will refuse to follow their commands. He will ridicule their flags, and he will look at their institutional interests as a complete game of fraud. Therefore, the first trade secret of all organized religions is to make you tremble, to make you feel completely unworthy, and to fill your heart with a deep existential guilt about everything that is natural to your biology. They tell you that you were born in original sin, that your hunger is an evil desire, and that your sexuality is a direct gateway to hell. Once you are thoroughly frightened, once you lose all confidence in your own inner voice, you become completely submissive. You are ready to drop on your knees and accept any stupid nonsense, any fictional map they hand to you, simply in the hope that some begotten son or some dead prophet will save you from damnation. To realize how deeply this fear operates within you, you must look into the ancient story of Mullah Nasruddin, when he was once completely lost in the absolute darkness of a dense jungle. He had spent the entire day trying frantic strategies to find a way out, but the thick forest and the heavy thorns had torn his clothes into rags, leaving him bleeding, hungry, and completely exhausted. As the sun set below the horizon and the terrifying shadows of the night began to envelop the trees, his lifelong philosophy of logical atheism began to shake. When death is standing right in front of you, whispering through the wild animals of the dark, all your intellectual arguments and academic reasons simply evaporate. Nasruddin fell upon his knees in the mud, looked up at the black sky, and for the first time in his life, he began to pray. He shouted into the silence, promising that if the Lord would only save his life and lead him out of this terrifying woods, he would become a committed Muslim, attend the mosque every single morning, follow every ritual of Islam, and adore the divine for the rest of his days. Just as he finished his desperate vow, a small bird flew directly over his head and dropped a lump of fresh excrement right into his open palms. Nasruddin looked down at his hands in the faint starlight, sighed with a total exasperation, and said, "Please, Lord, don't give me that shit. I am really lost." This is the exact condition of the common man when he turns to religion out of fear. His prayers are not an expression of love or gratitude. They are a desperate, panic-stricken blackmail born out of his internal insecurity. He wants to protect his false personality, his bank balance, and his domestic comfort. So he goes to the priest to buy a ticket to heaven. But true religion has nothing to do with this terrified escape from reality. True religion is a supreme, festive space where you celebrate your existence in its total multidimensionality. It is not a fasting, it is an absolute feasting. It is not a renunciation. It is a complete, overflowing satisfaction. When you look at the stars, when you listen to the birds singing in the morning, or when you feel the wind playing through the trees, you are listening to a live sermon that requires no human mediator, no holy text, and no institutional church. You are a direct part of this wild creative universe, and the only language you need to learn is the language of your own inner silence. When you fail to discover this silence, your sexual energy becomes completely perverted, shifting from a natural biological rhythm into the dark, distorted alley of homosexuality, of frantic obsession. In the contemporary West, homosexuality has become a massive social movement with its own clubs, its own political networks, and its own commercial advertising, because people are trying to make it a progressive statement of human rights. But if you look at the inner energetic pattern of this phenomenon, you will see that it is fundamentally unscientific and unnatural. A direct product of the fear of women that has been drilled into the masculine mind by an overbearing mother figure. Every little boy grows up watching his mother dominate the household, watching his poor father shrink into a submissive, silent spectator who has nothing to say. The boy feels a deep compassion for his father, but he also develops a terrifying subconscious dread of the female presence. He associates femininity with a castrating, violent control. And so, when he grows up, he cannot drop his guards before a woman. He seeks the comfortable, convenient, and easy company of his own sex. It is easy for two men to be friends. It is comfortable for them to live together because they operate on the very same wavelength of masculine psychology. There is no mystery between them. no deep misunderstanding, and therefore no intense friction. But because there is no friction between two identical poles of energy, there is also no possibility for supreme ecstasy. Ecstasy is born only out of the meeting of absolute opposites, through the tumultuous, wild, and dangerous collision of the masculine and the feminine forces. When you choose the comfortable alternative of your own pole, you are avoiding the natural challenge of growth. You may feel a cheap temporary happiness, but you will completely miss that grand alchemical explosion that occurs when the sun and the moon melt into each other within your own frame. To become a complete, integrated individual, you must have the courage to face the other pole, to let the opposite energy shatter your masks, and to use the relationship as a living mirror to discover your own inner woman. This same domestic distortion is what perpetuates the heavy, cold institution of the traditional husband. Look at the typical married man. He has 3 children, a home that feels like a prison, and a wife who is constantly hanging on his neck, turning every single day into a repetitive, automated nightmare. They claim they are staying together only for the sake of the children, but they do not see that they are raising those children in the middle of a burning hell, training them to reproduce the very same misery in the future. The husband sits in his armchair every morning, spreads the newspaper in front of his face to hide from his wife, and she reacts by barking at him with the very same words she has used for 20 years. They have become totally predictable robots, caught in a structured, dead pattern of mutual torment, because they have completely forgotten how to look into each other's eyes with authentic love. If you wish to escape this domestic hell, you must realize that you cannot change your wife. You can only initiate a radical transformation within your own being. You must drop your mechanical reactions and do something completely fresh, something that shatters the automated program of your household. Tomorrow morning, do not touch the newspaper. Stand up, look at your wife with genuine, loving clarity, give her a deep, spontaneous hug, and start cleaning the kitchen pans or washing the floor. She will be thrown into a total, absolute shock. Her mind will stop functioning because there is no ready-made pattern in her conditioning to handle this new reality. When you bring this alchemical magic of pure awareness into your relationship, you stop treating the woman as a personal servant or a financial commodity, and you begin to acknowledge her unique dignity as a human soul. Love is a supreme miracle that transforms everything it touches. If you look at a person with eyes of deep, meditative appreciation, their entire aura changes. Their face becomes radiant, and the cold walls of your mutual prison dissolve into a festive space of shared freedom. The father figure, which civilization has glorified as the absolute bedrock of society, is nothing but an artificial institution invented to protect the concept of private property. In the ancient days of matriarchy, the mother was the sole center of the human community, and the father was completely unknown because the woman was free to mingle with many partners. All men were simply uncles, potential protectors of the children, and there was no sense of personal possession. But the moment man invented private property, the moment he wanted to ensure that his accumulated wealth would be inherited solely by a child of his own blood, he had to conquer the woman. He invented the institution of marriage. He imposed the rigid taboo of virginity upon the female body, and he locked her inside the household so that he could be absolutely certain of his paternity. The traditional family was born out of greed, out of a commercial desire to control life and turn children into properties that carry the father's name and preserve his estate. This patriarchal family structure is the direct cause of every psychological pathology, every national boundary, and every insane war that has devastated this planet. The family is a small, restricted cage that programs the child with all its ancestral superstitions, its religious mafias, and its political paranoias. If you are born into a Christian home, you are fed with the exclusive dogma of the church before you even learn how to breathe consciously. If you are born into a Hindu home, you are branded with the values of the Vedas, taught to look at all other human beings as subhuman or infidels. Every family destroys the spontaneous innocence of the child, writing its own lies upon the blank slate of her pure consciousness, turning her into an ambitious, competitive ego who spends his whole life struggling to become a celebrity, a politician, or a billionaire. This frantic race to become number one keeps humanity in a state of permanent tension, ensuring that you live your life as a miserable failure because your unique natural potential has been sacrificed for the sake of social respectability. I am here to tell you that the family has already lost its biological utility and that it must be completely replaced by the commune if humanity is to survive global suicide. In a commune, children do not belong to individual parents as personal properties. They belong to the community as a whole. They are raised by many uncles and many aunts, receiving a rich variety of human perspectives, free from the narrow, suffocating programming of a single mother and father. There is no place for the commercial transaction of marriage, because relationships exist purely for the sake of love, for the sake of spontaneous joy. When two people are happy together, they share their energy, and when their paths naturally diverge at a crossroad, they say goodbye with an immense unclouded gratitude, without any legal drama, without any psychological pain, and without any sense of betrayal. To live in this space of absolute freedom, you must discover the unique synthesis of Zorba the Greek and Gautama the Buddha within your own frame. Zorba represents the rich, wild mud of the earth. He loves good food. He loves old wine. He loves beautiful women. And after a hard day of work, he takes his instrument down to the beach and dances naked under the stars for hours together. He carries no guilt about sin, no anxiety about heaven or hell. He lives every single moment with a total, full-blooded intensity. But Zorba is only the first half of the journey. Without the sky, he remains horizontal, bound to the limitations of matter. You must add the vertical dimension of the Buddha to his dance. Buddha represents the boundless sky, the cold, silent stars of absolute meditation, the pristine state of no mind where all desire is completely transcended. When the earth of Zorba meets the sky of the Buddha, a magnificent, unprecedented human being is born, Zorba the Buddha. He is fully material and fully spiritual. He can enjoy the juice of a fresh fruit with the very same innocence that he brings to his silent vipassana. He does not escape from the world. He does not go to the Himalayas to sit like a dry stone saint, because he knows that his own inner laboratory is right here in the middle of the marketplace. He is a radical rebel who has dropped all masks, all pretenses, and all social conditionings to show the universe his original, authentic face. Even if the crowd condemns him, even if the politicians lock him up, or the priests nail him to a cross, he remains completely satisfied, laughing with a supreme joy, because being himself is the greatest blessing that existence can ever bestow. Wake up from your robotic slumber, drop your biological begging bowl, and let your inner Zorba and your inner Buddha dance together in a magnificent celebration of eternal life. This radical willingness to lose everything is the only context in which the mechanical structure of the mind can be totally dismantled. When you are willing to look directly into the deep, unstructured abyss of your own insecurity, You are no longer a passive slave to the programmatic safety of society. Safety is a beautiful illusion invented by the fearful crowd to protect itself from the grand, wild current of existence. You have built an absolute fortress of respectability, professional success, and domestic predictability, completely unaware that this very fortress has turned into your spiritual tomb. You are alive only to the minimum degree required to keep your biological machine running, to go to the office, to produce accidental progeny, and to fulfill the automated expectations of your peers. But your vital energy, the incredible fire that manifests within your body as biological tension, continues to look for a real release, a true breakthrough into the limitless sky of freedom. When you turn to the mechanical routine of self-abuse, you are simply trying to buy a small, temporary peace of mind without paying the price of total transformation. You take the precious jewel of your primal energy, a super atom of cosmic force that has the potential to awaken your intelligence, and you flip it away into the void for the sake of a momentary, localized clearing of nervous tension. This is the ultimate tragedy of modern man. He handles his highest potentiality with the calculating mind of a cautious shopkeeper, completely terrified of the creative chaos that authentic awareness brings into life. You seek a cheap escape from your loneliness because you have never been taught how to transform that loneliness into the majestic, blissful space of aloneship. Loneliness is a psychological sickness born out of your dependency on the eyes of others, while aloneship is the ultimate health of a Buddha who is perfectly content within his own light. If you feel your soul vibrating in response to this daylight, if you are beginning to recognize how deeply your mechanical defenses have isolated you from the living current of existence, I invite you to bring your total presence into our shared circle of searchers. Let your participation be a conscious act of energetic alignment. Express your insights by interacting with this transmission and leave an authentic reflection in the comments below. Letting your personal vulnerability serve as an inspiration for other traveling souls. If this sharing of timeless wisdom is helping to dissolve the heavy ancestral weight of guilt from your consciousness, subscribe to this channel so that we can continue to look into the deepest mysteries of our inner world together. For those among you who feel a profound, overflowing joy and wish to participate directly in the independent continuity of this work, to help us provide this clarity to millions who are still spiritually numb and trapped in the programmatic matrices of the past, you are always welcome to click the join button on your screen offer a gesture of gratitude through super thanks, or explore our digital ebooks that are created to serve as clean, unclouded maps for your inner territory. Let your support be a completely natural, motiveless expression of love arising from your heart to help elevate the collective consciousness of this beautiful planet. The mind is always terrified of any space that cannot be managed by logic, because logic is the primary mechanism through which the ego maintains its artificial superiority. Society does not want you to be a free-spirited player. It wants you to be an ambitious, predictable businessman who is constantly running after a future goal that never arrives. The entire commercial architecture of the world depends on your perpetual dissatisfaction, because only a frustrated man can be induced to hoard useless commodities, to buy bigger cars, or to compete frantically with his neighbors for a false sense of respectability. You spend your entire life turning your vital energy into a dry bank balance, exchanging your living reality for a collection of plastic masks and institutional honors. And when the internal friction becomes too heavy to bear, you turn to your physical instincts, not for the sake of an ecstatic merging, but simply as a localized tranquilizer to numb the pain of your existence. This localized approach to your life force is what gives birth to the supreme irony of your sexuality. The faster and more aggressive your intimacy becomes, the more you ensure that it remains a completely mechanical reaction of the body rather than a conscious response of the soul. You approach the other person with a hurried, aggressive tension, looking merely for an immediate ejaculation, and within a few minutes the act is completed, leaving you dropped into a cold valley of exhaustion and remorse. This is the exact pattern that turns your love life into a monotonous chore, an automated routine that makes you feel deeply separate, empty, and resentful. Because your natural reality has been denied its full-bodied expression, your mind becomes entirely obsessed with substitutes. You turn to pornography, secret fantasies, and perverted desires, completely unaware that you are trapped in a vicious circle created by your own priests and moralists. The tantric vision introduces you to a magnificent total alternative where your biological tension is accepted with absolute innocence as the very soil from which your spirituality must blossom. Tantra does not ask you to renounce your body, to kill your senses, or to follow the dry, suicidal path of the traditional ascetic. Tantra tells you to slow down your breathing until it becomes a quiet, nearly invisible rhythm that allows your primal electricity to spread through your entire corporate frame. When you focus your full awareness on the Agni Chakra between your brows, the downward flow of your vital seed is naturally checked, and the energy begins its vertical ascent toward the highest peaks of superconsciousness. You slide into a profound, motionless valley orgasm where time stands completely still and the ego dissolves into absolute nothingness. You realize that the intense magnetic pull you have felt towards sex was never a hunger for another's flesh, but a deep, unquenchable thirst of your soul to melt into the timeless vacuum of universal consciousness. To live as a true individual requires the radical courage of a warrior who is ready to stand alone outside the collective comfort of the herd. The crowd can never forgive a man who is happy with himself, a man who refuses to carry their traditional guilt or follow their political mafias blindly. They will call you weird, they will brand your freedom as an act of sin, and they will do everything in their power to force you back into the submissive prison of their conventions. But once you have tasted the majestic sweetness of your own essential being, their criticisms and honors lose all value in your eyes. You live your life with an intense, playful vitality, treating every single moment as a supreme festival of existence. You stop bargaining with reality like a shopkeeper and you become a magnificent gambler who is always ready to stake the known past for the sake of the unexplored unknown, walking fearlessly toward the ultimate realization of your inner Buddhahood. This constant domestic negotiation, this cold civil war that you maintain within your household under the respectable name of marriage is the direct consequence of your inability to look into your own internal dark spaces. You have turned your relationship with the woman or the man you love into a defense mechanism, a structural tool to protect yourself from the deep, terrifying emptiness of your own spirit. Because you do not know how to sit quietly in your room doing nothing, the presence of the other becomes an absolute biological addiction for you, a continuous distraction to keep you from facing the reality of your mechanical mind. And because you are dependent on this addiction for your escape from boredom, you deep down despise the very person you claim to cherish. Dependence always breeds a hidden, boiling hostility, because your natural spirit can never accept a state of emotional slavery without feeling a profound destructive resentment. You look at your 3 children, you look at your family structure, and you convince yourself that you are sacrificing your happiness for their sake, completely oblivious to the fact that you are poisoning their consciousness at the root. Children are extremely acute observers. They do not listen to your moralistic sermons. They watch your real behavior. They sense the cold friction between their parents, and they absorb the heavy, guilt-ridden atmosphere of your household into their very bones. They grow up learning how to be false, how to print a synthetic smile upon their faces while carrying an intense, unexpressed anger in their hearts. You are training them to become identical copies of your own frustration, ensuring that they will repeat the exact same robotic nightmare in their own future marriages. The traditional family operates as an automated laboratory to crush the spontaneous innocence of the child, turning her into an ambitious, competitive ego who spends her days struggling for a false social validation. The father figure, which your civilization worships as the absolute provider and defender of morality, was created historically for a completely non-religious purpose: the preservation of private property. In the ancient days of matriarchy, humanity lived in direct tune with the natural current of life. The mother was the sole center of the community, and the father was completely unknown, because the woman was free to mingle with many partners without any sense of personal possession. But the moment man invented private property, the moment he wanted to ensure that his accumulated material wealth would be inherited exclusively by a boy of his own bloodline, he had to control the woman's body. He invented the cold institution of marriage. He locked her inside the parameters of the household, and he imposed the artificial taboo of virginity upon her so that he could be absolutely certain of his paternity. The traditional family was born out of commercial greed, out of a non-spiritual desire to turn human beings into personal commodities that carry the father's name and protect his estate. This patriarchal structure has turned the whole world into a giant madhouse, full of national boundaries, racial paranoias, and insane wars. The family teaches the little child that his nation is the greatest nation on earth, that his scripture was written by God Himself, and that all other human beings belong to a lower, sinful category. You are fed with these lies together with your mother's milk. And by the time you achieve an independent intellect, your mind is so deeply corrupted by these superstitions that you cannot see the naked reality of the universe. You join their armies, you murder innocent people in the name of a flag or a piece of cloth, and you feel like a great hero simply because your ego has been manipulated through medals and stripes. You live your life as a miserable cog in a vast destructive machine, completely disconnected from the natural ecstasy of existence. To break out of this ancestral sickness, you must allow the unique integration of Zorba the Greek and Gautama the Buddha to take place within your own frame. Zorba represents the wild, rich mud of the earth. He enjoys his food, he enjoys his wine, he loves his woman, and he can dance naked on the beach under the stars for hours together without a single thought of sin or righteousness. He is fully alive in his senses, innocent as an animal, and free from the suffocating chloroform of the priests. But Zorba is only the first half of the human journey. Without the sky, he remains horizontal, bound to the limitations of matter. You must add the vertical dimension of the Buddha to his full-blooded dance. Buddha represents the boundless sky, the deep silence of the Agni Chakra, the pristine state of no mind, where all desire is completely stilled and transformed into universal consciousness. When the earth of Zorba meets the sky of the Buddha, the perfect whole is realized. Zorba, the Buddha. He is fully material and fully spiritual, an organic individual who can enjoy the simple pleasures of the physical world with the exact same awareness that he brings to his deep meditation. He does not escape from the world. He does not look at your biological reality as a sin, because he knows that his inner temple is always present here and now. He is a radical rebel who has dropped all social pretensions, all hypocrisies, and all traditional conditionings to face the universe with his original face. Even if the crowd condemns him, even if he is crowned or crucified, it doesn't make the slightest difference to his inner peace, because being himself is the greatest blessing that existence can ever bestow. Drop your mechanical begging bowl, step out of the domestic tomb, and let your inner Zorba and your inner Buddha merge into a single magnificent celebration of eternal life. This supreme harmony within your inner world cannot be realized as long as you treat your vital force with the calculating intellect of an ordinary professional. The head is merely an administrative computer, a mechanical tool designed to handle the mathematics, the economics, and the practical utilities of your external survival. But your society has made the head the absolute master of your life, completely shutting the door on the heart, which is the seat of your feelings, your poetic sensibility, and your spontaneous love. When you live exclusively in your head, you look at everything as a commercial transaction, a cold opportunity to give less and grab more from the world around you. You look at your business, you look at your family, and you look at your meditation with the exact same retail mentality, asking what the personal profit or the spiritual dividend will be before you take a single step into the unknown. But meditation is not a business enterprise. It is a total radical leap from the head to the heart, and finally from the heart to your essential being. Being is your ultimate center, a space of absolute silence, pure nothingness, and an utter absence of thought or emotion. The head cannot communicate with this center directly because logic cannot grasp that which is formless and timeless. It must pass through the bridge of the heart. The heart understands the language of poetry, the magic of music, and the wild beauty of unconditional love virtues that the calculating computer of the brain barks at as dangerous and unscientific weaknesses. When you are willing to drop your intellectual cunning and listen to the silent whisper of your heart, you are initiating a profound alchemical process that transforms your cold, robotic existence into a radiant pool of vitality. If you sense a deep, quiet echo waking up within your chest as you listen to this transmission, if you are beginning to perceive how your intellectual calculations have kept you isolated from the living harmony of nature, I invite you to share this medicine with other traveling minds. Let your gratitude become a conscious act of communication. Leave a personal reflection in the comments section below. Share this video with another searcher who is trapped in the dry prison of logic, and subscribe to this channel so that we can continue this vertical ascent into awareness together. For those among you who are touched by an overflowing joy and wish to participate directly in protecting the freedom of this independent space, to help us keep this daylight alive for millions of souls across this planet without any commercial distortion, you are always welcome to click the join button on your interface, extend a direct gesture of energy through super thanks, or explore our digital ebooks that are created to serve as clear, authentic maps for your inner territory. Let your support be a natural, motiveless sharing of love arising directly from your being to support the ultimate awakening of humanity. When you sit in absolute silence, doing nothing, watching the simple rhythmic current of your breath as it moves in and out of your body, you are stepping completely out of the mechanical theater of social expectations. You are not trying to become someone else. You are not trying to fulfill an ideal or reach a distant future goal, because the very desire to achieve a goal is the primary chain that binds your spirit to slavery. You simply remain present to what is here and now, allowing your automated thoughts and your heavy conditionings to pass by like clouds across a vast, unclouded sky. The mind becomes confused, the old reactions stop functioning, because there is no programmatic layout in your brain to handle the presence of pure, non-doing awareness. The imposter dies. The two selves, the ideal me and the real me, merge into a single organic unity, and your original face is revealed. This state of inner uniqueness is what changes your external relationships from a violent nightmare of possessiveness into a beautiful, free-flowing friendship. When you do not know your own being, you are constantly hungry for the attention of others, using the people you love as mirrors to confirm your false personality. You try to possess them, you try to dominate them, and you control their freedom through jealousy and fear, turning your home into a dark, suffocating cage. But a meditator is an independent emperor of his own consciousness. His joy springs directly from his inner source without any cause in the outside world, and therefore he has no need to beg for validation from a blind crowd. His love is not a localized structural demand. It is a total, unconditional overflowing of his being that blesses everything it touches, transforming his ordinary daily life into a magnificent, eternal festival of pure cosmic consciousness. You must see that your current mechanical habits are nothing but a desperate attempt to buy comfort and security at the cheapest possible price. In the automated habit of masturbation, there is no other present to challenge your ego, no unpredictable human reality to shatter your plastic masks. You are completely the master of your own private fantasy. You do not have to risk being rejected. You do not have to face the deep, terrifying mirror of another human soul. And you do not have to expose your vulnerability to the winds of existence. It is perfectly safe, perfectly managed, and perfectly dead. It is a closed psychological circuit where you are simply playing with your own shadow, a masturbatory loop of the mind that can never bring you into contact with the vast, objective harmony of nature. And because it is a closed loop, it keeps you small, it keeps you isolated, and it leaves your inner being completely starved of true, life-giving connection. You are turning the wheel of your physiology in absolute darkness, using your primary life force like a cheap consumer product simply to escape from the deep boredom of your own head. The primary creative energy that has been given to you by existence is a magnificent atomic force. It is the very same electricity that causes the stars to rotate in their tracks, that makes the trees grow toward the sun, and that brings new souls into physical form. When this superatom of life, wells up within your body. It is a profound call from the infinite, an evolutionary challenge to expand your consciousness beyond the narrow limits of your ego. But because you have been raised in a neurotic society that is mortally afraid of this power, because your parents, your teachers, and your priests have filled your mind with a heavy, cold dread of your own biology, you look at this tension as an enemy. You treat this vital force like a piece of burning coal that is scorching your fingers, and you seek to cast it out as quickly as possible through a hurried mechanical release. You experience a momentary sneeze of physical relief, your body becomes empty, and you immediately drop headlong into a cold valley of exhaustion, depression, and a subtle, biting guilt. You have squandered your diamond for the sake of a temporary tranquilizer, completely unaware that this very energy was your ladder to the divine. To break out of this automated prison, you must allow your presence to become part of a living network of authentic awareness. This space of ours is not a commercial marketplace. It is a sacred communion of traveling souls who are tired of living like mechanical puppets in a divided world. If this daylight is striking a deep chord within your heart, let your gratitude overflow into our shared circle. Share your real reflections and your inner struggles in the comments below, letting your honesty light up the path for other searchers who are still groping in the dark night of tradition. Express your commitment to this inner revolution by liking this transmission and subscribing to this channel, so that we can continue to look into the deepest secrets of life together. For those among you who are filled with an overflowing joy and wish to participate directly in the independent preservation of these teachings, to help us provide this unclouded clarity to millions of sleeping minds across this planet without falling under the control of corporate or institutional mafias, you are always welcome to click the join button on your interface. Extend a direct gesture of energy through super thanks, or explore the deep wisdom compiled in our digital ebooks. Let your contribution be a completely natural, motiveless expression of love arising from your being to help elevate the collective consciousness of humanity. Your sexual energy is currently dormant at the very base of your spine, the center that the ancient seers called the Muladhara Chakra. Society has a massive vested interest in keeping your consciousness locked at this lowest physical level, because a man who lives exclusively in his basement is very easy to dominate, very easy to exploit, and very easy to drive into their ambitious political races. When you engage in the mechanical habit of self-abuse, you are simply short-circuiting your internal mechanism, taking the vital force from the lowest center and throwing it directly out into the mud, never allowing it to rise through the vertical channel of your body. It is like a man who lives his entire life in the dark sewers of a magnificent palace, completely oblivious to the fact that there are sunlit terraces and beautiful gardens waiting for him on the upper floors. Your current sexuality is a fragmented, localized nightmare that leaves your soul perpetually depleted and old. But your biology is autonomous. It does not listen to the foolish moralistic sermons of your mind, and it continues to generate this atomic current regardless of your guilt. The human mind is a very funny thing, completely habituated to handling profound internal devices with the most stupid mechanical routines. I am reminded of a small story about a man who went into a modern department store and purchased a highly advanced automated electronic toothbrush that cleaned teeth using high-frequency ultrasonic waves. He brought this sophisticated machine home, but because his entire behavior pattern was structured by old robotic habits, he put the electronic brush into his mouth and began to scrub his teeth frantically back and forth with his hand, using all his physical force until his gums were bleeding and his mouth was full of pain. His neighbor looked through the open window, saw the blood, and shouted, "Why are you scrubbing so hard with your hand? That is an automated electronic machine. You just have to hold it perfectly still and let the inner current do the work." The man wiped the blood from his lips, sighed with an absolute exhaustion, and barked back, "Shut up! I am a very busy man. I am in a huge hurry, and I don't have time to wait for the electricity to do the work." This is exactly what you are doing with your primary sexual energy every time you turn to mechanical friction for a quick release. Sex is an automated, divine current built into your physiology by existence itself, designed to slow down your mind, stop your thinking, and take you directly into the timeless vacuum of samadhi. You do not need to bring your hurried aggression to it. You do not need to scrub frantically, and you do not need to force your body into a state of nervous panic. You just have to hold yourself perfectly still, relax deeply into the vital current, and let the life force do the work of elevating your consciousness. But because you are always living like a frantic businessman who is constantly running to catch a train, you bring that same hurried retail mentality to your deepest, most intimate energy. You snort, you sweat, you rush for 2 or 3 minutes, and then you ejaculate, completely blind to the fact that you have just ruined a magnificent opportunity to touch the eternal. The secret of transforming this primal energy lies entirely in the deep combination of shallow breathing and absolute focus on the Agni Chakra, the third eye center between your brows. When the biological tension rises within you, instead of running to the bathroom for a mechanical release, sit down in absolute silence and become a passive, watchful warrior. Slow down your breathing purposefully. Let your breath become so quiet, so shallow, that the movement of your chest is completely imperceptible, as if breathing has come to an absolute standstill. When your breath is perfectly calm, your vital seed is naturally checked, and your energy stops rushing downward toward a localized genital discharge. It stands still, it becomes cool, and under the high charge of your silent awareness, it turns around and begins its majestic vertical ascent up the spine. As this atomic energy rises through the inner vertical path, it begins to pass through your higher centers, changing your entire psychological reality from a state of neurosis into a space of festive celebration. When the sex energy reaches the heart chakra, it is refined and transformed into the beautiful, unconditional space of authentic love. You are no longer a horny gorilla looking to exploit another person for your physical relief. You become a love-filled being whose heart is overflowing with music, poetry, and a deep reverence for all existence. When the energy moves through the throat, it turns into pure, spontaneous creativity, and finally it hits the crown center, the Sahasrara, at the top of your head. In that supreme moment, your individual ego completely dissolves like a single drop of water into the infinite expanse of the universal ocean. You have touched the valley orgasm of existence, a state of absolute self-effacement and timeless bliss that leaves you permanently transformed. This vertical expansion is the ultimate target of human life, but your priests and political leaders have done their absolute best to keep you completely blind to this path. They know that a man who has touched the eternal bliss of Samadhi can never be frightened, can never be made into a submissive slave, and can never be induced to buy their false commodities or follow their herds blindly. They want you to remain a divided, guilt-ridden robot who uses masturbation as a cheap tranquilizer to numb the pain of his domestic and professional prison. They have filled your mind with the poisonous idea that your body is dirty, ensuring that your sexuality becomes a secret, perverted obsession that leaks out through the wrong pores of your personality. It is time to drop their heavy, dead traditions, to stop fighting your own life force like a madman, and to face the naked reality of your biology with absolute innocence. You must develop the creative, playful attitude of Zorba the Buddha within your own daily life, allowing your material roots and your spiritual sky to meet in a grand, harmonious dance. Do not live your life as a cautious calculation. Do not treat your vital force like a commodity to be bartered, but become a magnificent gambler who is always ready to stake his entire known past for the sake of the unexplored unknown. When you sit in complete silence, doing nothing, watching the simple rhythm of your breath with pure, non-doing awareness, the programmatic structure of your mind stops functioning completely. The tension dissolves into absolute stillness. The downward leakage of your vital seed is transformed into a beautiful upward current of superconsciousness, and you step out of your tight corporate room under the vast starlit sky of the divine. Love yourself, trust your own spontaneous intelligence, and let your primary atomic energy uncoil itself naturally, moving from the outer wall of lust into the pristine, eternal silence of your inner Buddha. When you look into the total mechanics of this internal movement, you see that the path from sex to superconsciousness is the only valid journey for a mature human being. You can continue to run after your old mechanical habits. You can continue to flip your precious life force away into the void like ordinary stones, but you will remain a miserable, hollow beggar until the very day you enter your grave. The choice belongs entirely to you here and now, because the gateway to the infinite is always open in the immediate present. Drop your plastic masks, drop your commercial paranoias, and let your inner warrior arise to claim his natural heritage of supreme bliss. By slowing down your breath and grounding your presence in the Agni Chakra, you allow the superatom of your sex energy to explode into a radiant halo of light, transforming your ordinary, robotic existence into a pristine, unending celebration of universal consciousness. To live dangerously is to step off the precipice of your calculated comfort and throw your entire existence into the living, unpredictable fire of the present moment. Security is nothing but an absolute cemetery, a protective cage that your programmatic mind clings to because it is mortally terrified of the creative chaos of real life. You have turned your whole daily routine into a well-managed retail transaction, trying to balance your emotional books, trying to secure your future respectability without ever realizing that this very pursuit of safety has turned you into a hollow ghost. You look at your job, you look at your family, and you look at your secret mechanical habits, and you treat them all as defensive strategies to shield your heart from the boundless, terrifying current of the universe. But life cannot be accumulated in a bank vault. It cannot be safely locked away inside the codes of traditional morality, because life thrives exclusively on the sharp edge of total insecurity. The moment you settle for comfort, the moment you choose the familiar routine over the grand risk of the unknown, your vital force begins to stagnate. Your intelligence turns dull, and you become a sleepwalking machine. The mechanical habit of self-abuse is the supreme expression of this cautious, business-oriented mentality. In masturbation, you are completely the master of a small, closed, and perfectly managed psychological matrix. There is no real other present to defy your ego, no unpredictable human presence to look into your eyes and shatter your plastic masks, and no wild wind of vulnerability to blow through the parameters of your privacy. It is entirely safe, entirely predictable, and entirely dead. You are simply playing a dual game with your own shadow, a masturbatory loop of the brain that uses your vital electricity merely as a temporary tranquilizer to numb the deep boredom of your isolated existence. You are short-circuiting the magnificent mechanism of your physiology, taking the superatom of your sexual force from the lowest physical centers and throwing it away in the mud, never allowing its atomic currents to uncoil and ascend the inner path towards superconsciousness. You live your days like a beggar who is sitting on a box of hidden diamonds, yet you continue to gather ordinary stones from the street simply because you are too terrified to open the lid. If you sense a deep, silent shift occurring within your heart as we look into these hidden wounds, if you feel your intelligence waking up to the reality of your inner treasures, I invite you to bring your total presence into our shared circle of searchers. Let your participation be a conscious act of spiritual alignment. Express your dawning understanding by interacting with this current of daylight, and leave your own authentic reflection in the comments below, letting your personal vulnerability serve as an open map for other traveling souls. If this sharing of unclouded truth is helping to dissolve the heavy ancestral weight of guilt from your mind, subscribe to this channel so that we can continue to walk out of the programmatic matrices of the past together. For those among you who are filled with a profound, overflowing joy and wish to participate directly in the independent preservation of these teachings, to help us keep this fire alive for millions of sleeping minds across this planet without falling under the control of corporate or institutional mafias, You are always welcome to click the join button on your interface. Extend a direct gesture of energy through super thanks, or explore the deep maps of the inner territory compiled in our digital ebooks. Let your contribution be a completely natural, motiveless expression of love arising from your heart to help elevate the collective consciousness of humanity. To live as a true individual, you must transform your entire orientation from that of a cautious shopkeeper into a magnificent gambler who is always ready to stake his entire known past for the sake of the unexplored unknown. The businessman is an absolute coward. He will only move if a profit is guaranteed. He will only invest his presence if he knows exactly what the structural dividend will be. But meditation is a radical, unconditional leap that requires you to drop all your retail calculations, all your logic, and all your heavy luggage of memory at the door. You must be willing to become a total zero, an absolute emptiness where there is neither thought nor feeling, but only a pure, pristine silence. This is the state of no mind, the vertical dimension of your being, where you are no longer a separate ego, but a clear space through which the universal melody can sing its eternal song. The ordinary man spends his life completely trapped in the horizontal dimension of doing, constantly running from one goal to another, trying to add more furniture, more money, or more respectability to his name. He treats his life as a continuous preparation for a tomorrow that never arrives, sacrificing his immediate presence for the sake of a fictional future. But your essential being knows no tomorrow. It exists exclusively in the immediate urgency of the here and now. The target is not somewhere else. The goal is not a distant point across the ocean. The goal is right here, hidden within the very breath that is entering your chest at this precise second. When you drop your frantic race, when you stop trying to realize an artificial ideal of perfection, you settle naturally into your own source. The civil war within your corporate frame dissolves on its own. The imposter dies, and your original, authentic face is revealed to the universe. This internal integration is what gives birth to the unique, unprecedented reality of Zorba the Buddha. Zorba represents the rich, wild mud of the earth. He enjoys his food, he enjoys his wine, he loves his woman, and he can dance on the muddy beach under the stars for hours with a full-blooded intensity. He carries no fear of hell, no anxiety about sin, and no dependency on the dead dogmas of the priests. He is completely natural, innocent as a tiger, and rooted in the reality of his senses. But Zorba is only the first half of the human potentiality. Without the vertical sky, he remains horizontal, bound to the limitations of mortality. You must add the pristine dimension of the Buddha to his earthiness. Buddha represents the boundless sky, the deep silent heights of meditation, the cold unclouded stars of absolute consciousness, where all desire is completely stilled and transformed into pure bliss. When the earth of Zorba and the sky of the Buddha meet within your own frame, you become a perfect whole, an organic individual who is fully material and fully spiritual. You do not escape from the world. You do not leave your wife or your business to go to the mountains like a dry stone saint, because you know that your inner temple is always present right here in the middle of the marketplace. You can run your store, you can handle your technology, and you can participate in the ordinary utilities of survival, but you remain completely transcendental, untouched by the greed and competition of the crowd. You handle the material world with the sharp intelligence of a scientist. You handle your interpersonal relationships with the deep melody of a poet, and you face your own existential center with the profound silence of a master. You are a radical rebel who has dropped all masks, all hypocrisies, and all traditional conditionings to live your life as a grand, unending festival of absolute freedom. The traditional family structure, which your civilization worships as the very foundation of human morality, is historically the primary mechanism used to crush the spontaneous, childlike innocence. The family is an artificial prison designed to capture the free-flowing current of a new soul and turn it directly into an obedient commodity for institutional exploitation. Your father and your mother, trapped in their own subconscious sleep, cannot tolerate an authentic, unpredictable individual. So they immediately begin the brutal work of pruning your natural branches. They write their own lies, their national boundaries, their racial paranoias, and their religious mafias upon the blank slate of your pure mind, turning you into a divided, schizophrenic ego who is permanently at war with his own body. They teach you that obedience is the ultimate virtue, making you feel so deeply guilty about your natural instincts that you spend your entire life as a submissive, fearful puppet, ready to go to war or sacrifice your presence for the sake of a flag or a piece of holy text. To break out of this ancestral sickness, you must accept the absolute responsibility of your own consciousness, completely refusing to dump your failures on your parents, your society, or a fictional god. You must see that your home has become a cold, automated tomb where you and your spouse are simply together out of an emotional addiction, using each other as shields to avoid facing the terrifying vacuum of your own loneliness. If you continue to repeat this structured pattern of mutual torment, you are simply training your 3 children to replicate the exact same robotic nightmare in their own future. Change must begin on your side of the relationship in a radical, total way. Tomorrow morning, drop your mechanical reactions. Do not look for the newspaper. Look into the eyes of your wife with an unclouded clarity. Give her a deep, spontaneous hug and start washing the kitchen floor with a festive joy. You will throw her mind into an absolute shock. Her programmatic defenses will stop functioning, and the alchemical magic of pure love will dissolve the heavy walls of your domestic prison instantly. When you bring this high charge of silent awareness into your intimacy, your primary biological electricity is no longer wasted in a frantic 2-minute race for physical relief. You slow down your breathing purposefully, letting your breath become so quiet, so shallow, that it feels as if your chest has come to an absolute standstill. When your breath is perfectly cool, your vital seed is naturally checked, and your energy ceases to leak downward toward a localized genital discharge. You remain locked in a profound, motionless embrace for hours together, focusing your internal presence directly on the Agni Chakra between your brows. The atomic current turns around and begins its majestic vertical ascent up the spine, passing through your higher centers, refining your lust into unconditional love, and finally exploding into the crown center at the top of your head. In that supreme moment, you dissolve like a drop into the universal ocean, touching the deep, healing waters of the valley orgasm, where time disappears and you realize that you are one with the immortal rhythm of existence. Once this daylight of superconsciousness illuminates your inner landscape, the mechanical habit of masturbation drops away from your life naturally, without the slightest effort of iron control. You do not need to fight your own body. You do not need to take rigid vows of restraint, because the lower automatically loses all its glamour the moment the higher is tasted. A man who holds a priceless diamond in his open palm does not need a moral lecture to drop the ordinary stones he was hoarding in his pockets. He lets them go spontaneously because they have become completely meaningless. You become an independent, integrated individual, well-centered and well-grounded in your own source, free from the need to beg for attention or validation from a blind, sleeping crowd. Let your primary life force uncoil itself naturally. Let your inner Zorba and your inner Buddha merge into a single magnificent symphony, and let your entire life become a pristine, unending celebration of cosmic consciousness. If you feel your soul vibrating in deep alignment with this transmission of truth, if you recognize that this circle of ours is a genuine sanctuary for your awakening spirit, take a moment to root your presence in our shared field. Express your understanding by interacting with this daylight. Leave your own honest reflection in the comments section below, letting your words become a guiding light for another searcher who is still groping in the dark corners of traditional guilt. If this unclouded philosophical guidance is helping to clear the thick fog of tradition from your mind, subscribe to this channel so that we can continue this vertical journey out of the programmatic matrices of history together. For those among you who are touched by a profound, overflowing gratitude and wish to support the financial independence of this work, to help us provide this clarity to millions of souls across this planet without falling under the control of corporate or institutional monopolies, you are always welcome to click the join button on your screen. Offer an intentional gesture of support through super thanks, or explore our digital ebooks that are created to serve as clear, authentic maps for your inner territory. Let your support be a completely conscious, motiveless expression of love arising naturally from your heart to help birth a fresh, enlightened humanity on this beautiful earth. The head is merely an administrative computer, a mechanical device built by your society to handle the equations, the measurements, and the competitive utilities of external survival. But your civilization has made this computer the absolute ruler of your life, completely blocking the path to the heart, which is the seat of your poetry, your aesthetic sensitivity, and your spontaneous love. When you operate exclusively from your intellect, you view your whole existence as a commercial transaction, an opportunity to give the absolute minimum of yourself while grabbing the maximum profit from the world. You handle your store, you handle your family, and you handle your meditation with the exact same retail anxiety, constantly asking what the personal gain or the spiritual dividend will be before you risk moving into the unknown. But meditation is not a commercial enterprise. It is a total vertical leap from the head to the heart, and finally from the heart to the very core of your being. Being is your ultimate center, an empty space of pure silence, unclouded nothingness, and absolute absence of thought or feeling. The brain cannot connect with this center directly because logic can never grasp that which is formless and timeless. It must use the delicate bridge of the heart. The heart understands the language of music, the dance of creativity, and the wild beauty of unconditional love qualities that the calculating mind barks at as dangerous and unscientific weaknesses. When you have the courage to silence your intellectual cunning and listen to the quiet whisper of your heart, you are initiating a profound alchemical process that turns your cold, robotic life into a radiant pool of cosmic vitality. If you hear a deep, silent echo waking up within your own chest as you listen to this transmission, if you are beginning to perceive how your intellectual equations have isolated your spirit from the living harmony of nature, I invite you to share this medicine with other traveling minds. Let your gratitude become a conscious act of communication. Leave a personal reflection in the comments section below. Share this video with another searcher who is trapped in the dry prison of logic, and subscribe to this channel so that we can continue this vertical ascent into awareness together. For those among you who feel an overflowing joy and wish to participate directly in protecting the freedom of this independent space, to help us keep this daylight alive for millions of souls across this planet without any commercial distortion, you are always welcome to click the join button on your interface, extend a direct gesture of energy through super thanks, or explore our digital ebooks that are created to serve as clear, authentic maps for your inner territory. Let your support be a natural, motiveless sharing of love arising directly from your being to support the ultimate awakening of humanity. When you sit in absolute silence, doing nothing, watching the simple rhythmic current of your breath as it moves in and out of your corporate frame, you are stepping completely out of the mechanical theater of social expectations. You are not trying to become a celebrity. You are not trying to fulfill an artificial ideal or reach a distant future perfection, because the very ambition to achieve a goal is the primary chain that binds your soul to slavery. You simply remain present to what is here and now, letting your automated thoughts and your traditional conditionings pass by like clouds across a vast, unclouded sky. The mind becomes confused, the old reactions stop functioning, because there is no programmatic layout in your brain to handle the presence of pure, non-doing awareness. The imposter dies, the two separate entities, the ideal me and the real me, merge into a single organic whole, and your original face is revealed to the universe. This state of inner uniqueness is what transforms your external relationships from a violent, painful nightmare of possessiveness into a beautiful, free-flowing friendship. When you are completely empty of your own being, you become a beggar who is constantly hungry for the attention of others, using the people you claim to love as mirrors to confirm your false personality. You try to possess them, you try to dominate them, and you control their freedom through jealousy and fear, turning your home into a dark, suffocating cage. But a meditator is an independent emperor of his own consciousness. His joy springs directly from his inner source, without any cause in the outside world, and therefore he has no need to beg for validation from a blind, sleeping crowd. His love is not a localized, structural demand. It is a total, unconditional overflowing of his being that blesses everything it touches, transforming his ordinary daily life into a magnificent, eternal festival of pure cosmic consciousness. This supreme harmony within your inner world cannot be realized as long as you look at your vital force through the distorted eyes of a monk or an ascetic. All traditional religions have taught man to renounce his body, to leave the world, and to turn his back on every small pleasure that makes life a festive space. They have told you that to kill your desires is to please the divine, but they do not understand that they are simply teaching you how to commit a slow psychological suicide. When you trample upon your natural love, when you block the energy of sex through a forced and artificial vow of celibacy, you are not purifying your soul. You are simply creating a deep, festering wound within your own physiology. Life stems from sex, life consists of sex, and it is only through the refinement of this vital force that you can ever hope to reach the serene peaks of authentic compassion. If you block the source, the stream dries up completely, and you turn into a cold, joyless, and unproductive entity that walks the earth like a living corpse. The so-called celibate saints and monks have contributed absolutely nothing to the deep wisdom of humanity, to the beauty of art, or to the ecstatic dance of our collective consciousness. Because their love is dead, their intelligence becomes utterly arid. A man whose vital force has been suppressed cannot look at a painting and feel its aesthetic magic. He cannot compose poetry that carries a living soul, because his words are nothing but a mechanical exercise of the intellect, empty of all spiritual fire. The only thing these repressive institutions have given to mankind is a collection of deep perversions, psychological anxieties, and modern physical plagues like AIDS, which are the direct biological consequences of going against human hormones and the natural laws of your own body. Your body is a beautifully autonomous mechanism that operates under its own natural program, completely ignoring the foolish dogmas of your mind. It does not care whether you are a Christian monk or a chaste priest. It continues to produce its vital seed every single day. And when you sit on this seed with an iron control, it leaks out through the wrong channels, creating an intense subconscious obsession that turns your whole life into a dark, secret nightmare. It is because we are gathering together on this platform to look directly into these hidden wounds that this circle of ours has become a unique sanctuary for the human spirit. We are not here to indulge in commercial transactions or to follow a blind traditional herd. We are here to support each other in the total deprogramming of our minds. If you feel a deep, silent gratitude for these insights, if you sense that this daylight is helping you to dissolve the heavy ancestral chains of guilt, I invite you to share this medicine with other traveling souls. Leave your authentic reflection in the comments below. Let your friends know about this transmission by sharing the video and subscribe to this channel so that our shared awareness can continue to expand like a fire across this planet. For those among you who feel a profound calling to become active participants in this inner revolution, to help us keep this flame alive and protect these teachings from the corporate monopolies of the world, you are always welcome to click the join button on your interface. Extend a direct gesture of energy through super thanks, or look into our carefully compiled digital ebooks that serve as clear maps for your inner territory. Let your contribution be a completely motiveless sharing of love, arising naturally from your heart to help birth a new, enlightened humanity on this earth. The priests and the politicians have always been in a deep mutual conspiracy to exploit man through the mechanism of fear. They know that a man who is perfectly centered, a man who loves his body and trusts his own spontaneous intelligence, can never be made into a slave. He will refuse to follow their commands. He will ridicule their flags, and he will look at their institutional interests as a complete game of fraud. Therefore, the first trade secret of all organized religions is to make you tremble, to make you feel completely unworthy, and to fill your heart with a deep existential guilt about everything that is natural to your biology. They tell you that you were born in original sin, that your hunger is an evil desire, and that your sexuality is a direct gateway to hell. Once you are thoroughly frightened, once you lose all confidence in your own inner voice, you become completely submissive. You are ready to drop on your knees and accept any stupid nonsense, any fictional map they hand to you, simply in the hope that some begotten son or some dead prophet will save you from damnation. True religion has nothing to do with this terrified escape from reality. True religion is a supreme, festive space where you celebrate your existence in its total multidimensionality. It is not a fasting, it is an absolute feasting. It is not a renunciation, it is a complete overflowing satisfaction. When you look at the stars, when you listen to the birds singing in the morning, or when you feel the wind playing through the trees, you are listening to a live sermon that requires no human mediator, no holy text, and no institutional church. You are a direct part of this wild creative universe, and the only language you need to learn is the language of your own inner silence. When you bring this high charge of silent awareness into your intimacy, your primary biological electricity is no longer wasted in a frantic 2-minute race for physical relief. Slow down your breathing purposefully, focusing your internal presence directly on the Agni Chakra between your brows, and let the atomic current rise up the spine toward superconsciousness. Love yourself, trust your own spontaneous intelligence, and let your inner Zorba and your inner Buddha dance together in a magnificent, unending celebration of universal consciousness. This total lack of purpose, this beautiful cosmic non-achievement, is where your inner player finally encounters the ultimate reality of existence. The business mind will continue to look into the future, frantically demanding to know what the ultimate outcome of your spiritual search will be, completely blind to the fact that existence is already final right here and now. You have been raised in a global culture that treats life like a commercial checklist, a long series of duties and goals that must be fulfilled to satisfy your parents, your politicians, and your priests. But your primary biological energy, the raw electricity that fumed within your body as localized tension, does not understand the language of financial profit or social respectability. It is an atomic current, a superatom of universal life force, designed to take you out of your narrow ego and dissolve your being into the vast, starlit silence of the Absolute. When you turn to the mechanical habit of self-abuse, you are simply treating this magnificent treasure like a piece of refuse to be cast off in a hurry, completely unaware that this very force is your only bridge from sex to superconsciousness. You are behaving like a cautious shopkeeper who scrubs frantically with his own hands because he is too terrified to let the natural electricity do the work of his internal transformation. The sexual maniac and the repressed ascetic are identical twins operating within the very same illusion of mechanical division. The priest tells you to trample upon your body, to deny your senses, and to look at your physical instincts as an animalistic decay that will drag your soul into hell. But your autonomous body continues to generate its vital seed regardless of his foolish dogmas. And when you sit on this boiling volcano with an iron control, your energy simply turns into a deep, hidden wound. It turns into an obsession that fills your head with perverted curiosities, driving you toward pornography and secret fantasies, because you have been denied the simple daylight of natural expression. This is the exact strategy that society uses to turn you into a divided, submissive robot. Because a man who is full of self-hatred and existential guilt is a perfect slave for their political races and their institutional wars. He will gladly go to a foreign land to murder innocent human beings in the name of a flag or a piece of holy text, simply to find a violent, destructive outlet for the life force that has been suffocated within his heart. If you feel your intelligence waking up to the reality of this ancestral manipulation, if you perceive that your daily life has become a structured prison of social expectations, I invite you to bring your total presence into our shared sanctuary of searchers. Let your participation be a completely conscious act of energetic sharing. Leave your authentic reflection in the comments below. Share this transmission with another traveling soul who is still groping in the dark. And subscribe to this channel so that we can continue to walk out of these mechanical traps together. For those among you who are filled with a profound, overflowing joy and wish to participate directly in the independent preservation of these radical teachings to help us keep this daylight alive for millions across this earth without falling under the control of corporate or religious monopolies, you are always welcome to click the join button on your interface, extend a direct gesture of energy through super thanks, or explore the clear maps of the inner territory compiled in our digital ebooks. Let your contribution be a natural expression of love arising directly from your heart to help elevate the collective consciousness of this beautiful planet. True celibacy has nothing to do with the dry, joyless suicide of the traditional monk. It is the ultimate cream of a profound meditative integration. When you slow down your breathing and allow it to become a quiet, nearly invisible rhythm, your primal electricity stops rushing downward toward a localized genital discharge. It uncoils from the lower physical centers and begins its vertical ascent up the spine, passing through your higher centers and transforming your entire psychological reality from a state of conflict into a space of festive celebration. When this atomic current reaches the Agni Chakra between your brows, your individual ego completely evaporates and you slide into the deep, healing waters of the valley orgasm. Time stands completely still. The wall between the inside and the outside collapses entirely, and you realize that you are not a separate machine, but a direct manifestation of the infinite universal ocean. This is the birth of the new man, the evolution of Zorba the Buddha, who is fully material and fully spiritual, rooted deeply in the rich mud of the earth, while his consciousness touches the ultimate peaks of absolute freedom. Reclaim your spontaneous innocence. Drop your plastic masks and let your inner warrior arise to celebrate the wild poetry of existence. You can find our ebook, The Hidden Energy Protocol, Reclaim Your God Mode, in the description below.